knocked out my hearing, which threw off my equilibrium, my balance, and I couldn't walk, and I had vasculitis.
This is the point at which everything is not okay. On television and off, Ashton Kutcher is recognized for his quirky sense of humor and lighthearted nature. He is known for his fun-loving personality. There were 8 seasons of him playing the role of Michael Kelso, the typical himbo, on that 70s show. He also had his own MTV series called Punk'd, in which he perpetrated pranks on other known celebrities. Mila Kunis, who had previously worked with Kutcher, became his wife in 2015, and the pair now has 2 children together. Even though the actor's all-American good looks and constant grin may give the impression that he is having it easy, the reality is far more complicated. There is a completely separate aspect of the performer that Hollywood takes very little notice of. As time went on, he gradually disclosed his true identity to others around him. The hidden mystery that encompasses that 70s show. So what else is hidden in there that we don't know? Why did he decide to reveal this particular aspect? Let's dig deeper into this interesting aspect. And do you know the legend of Ashton Kutcher? Leave an A in the comments if you do. That 70s show and the pranks. Beginning in August of 1998, viewers could follow the Foreman family as they were viewed through the eyes of Eric Foreman, the adolescent son, and his tight-knit circle of friends on that 70s show. Stephen Hyde, the carefree stoner with a rebellious side, and Fez, the adorable but naive exchange student, were all part of this gang. Michael Kelso was an attractive and charismatic heartthrob. Donna Pinchotti, Eric's savvy and down-to-earth neighbor, and Jackie Burkhart, the posh and a little snobby girl from school, joined them. Despite its comedic veneer, the series dealt with timeless themes that affect all generations of teenagers. Substance misuse and underage drinking were among the topics covered, as were the highs and lows of relationships and overcoming academic constraints. The characters' profound caring and friendship shone through the snarky humor and continual squabbling. The on-screen romance between Jackie and Kelso is a prime illustration of this connection. In the 5th episode of Season 1, they kissed in front of a mesmerized audience of 10 million, bringing attention to their romance. When the two were together, Ashton was 19 and Mila Kunis was a mere 14 years old. Despite her anxiety and nervousness, Mila Kunis remembers her first on-screen kiss with Ashton Kutcher with great clarity. It was early in their filming schedule, so she thought the sequence would just be a kiss, so she was surprised when it asked for a more personal encounter. Despite her initial concern, Ashton Kutcher was kind and calmed her, trying to make her feel as comfortable as possible. But when Danny Masterson, who portrayed Hyde, made a casual comment, things started to change. Even more unsettling for Kunis was Masterson's playful offer of $10 to French kiss her, which Kutcher turned down. Looking back, the incident, which was intended as a playful joke, has taken on a more serious tone. Many people considered Kunis's sensitivity and timidity throughout her early career endearing, and now she's talking about it. Mila Kunis has spoken up about how the editors of that 1970s sitcom made her feel uncomfortable during her character's romance sequences, except for Tofu's character. She admitted that she was almost forced to kiss every male character on the program. Kunis shared her worry about how this affected her, saying that it bothered her and her parents. The uncomfortable aspect of this on-screen kissing was openly admitted by Kunis. She had little say in the subject and believed the authors and producers hadn't given it much thought. She said it was all incorrect and couldn't understand why the authors didn't think about the consequences of their choices. The unsettling tales about Hollywood have been circulated to all of us. One can only speculate as to the circumstances surrounding the production if Mila Kunis was coerced into performing such unsettling sequences. Secrets of the Ashton Family. Season 1 of that 1970s program was a smashing success, with 7 million viewers tuning in for each of the 25 episodes. Both fans and detractors were quick to comment on Ashton Kutcher's meteoric rise to stardom. Some said he was just famous for his attractiveness and not for his actual skill, while others praised his meteoric climb to the top. Michael, Ashton's twin brother, was the one who felt the effects of his achievement the most strongly among his detractors. Michael said that he often felt envious, especially when he thought Ashton was getting more praise and admiration than he was. His emotional stability was severely compromised by this harbored animosity. When word got out about Michael's health problem, things started to change drastically. Everything changed for Ashton when he saw his twin brother collapse on the hospital bed. After this terrifying ordeal, Ashton looked at his life and work through fresh eyes. Diane Kutcher, Ashton's mom, didn't find out she was expecting twins until she was on her way to the hospital to give birth. Diane gave birth to Ashton's twin brother Michael only 5 minutes after Ashton was born. At delivery, Michael weighed just 4 pounds, which caused the physicians to express instant worry. Diane had no idea that her kid might develop serious health problems down the road due to difficulties during birth, such as acute oxygen deprivation, a modest degree of cerebral palsy, which impacts mobility, balance, and posture, was finally identified with Michael. The most prevalent kind of motor impairment in children is cerebral palsy affects a person's capacity to regulate their muscles and arises from either aberrant or damaged brain development. At first, Michael's illness was misunderstood by the Kutcher family. Despite everything, they looked past the contrasts between them and concentrated on the skills and abilities of each sibling. After some thought, Michael recalled their childhood and how their family never made them feel different. On the contrary, he and Ashton only acknowledged that they were different. Michael Kutcher reminisced about the time Ashton insisted Michael accompany him on any sleepovers because of how much Ashton cared for his twin brother. When compared to Michael's illness, Ashton felt guilty about his health and the lack of abnormality in his life. Unfortunately, Michael's onset of flu-like symptoms in 8th grade turned their lives upside down. His heart enlarged due to viral myocarditis, a life-threatening illness that required a transplant, as soon as doctors identified it. The doctors gave Michael a very bad prognosis, saying he only had 3 or 4 weeks to live. Throughout this crucial time, Ashton was there for Michael, always there to provide an ear and a shoulder. When Michael stopped responding, Ashton was left to deal with a deep feeling of powerlessness as the matter approached a crucial stage. Ashton thought about going to extremes. When he begged his parents if he might be sacrificed so that his brother Michael could live, he was thinking about how his own heart would fit Michael perfectly. Thanks to a victim in a different state, a donor was located in just 24 hours, which was a huge relief. A heart transplant saved Michael's life and kept him from meeting what appeared to be an inevitable and catastrophic end. High school was the site of Ashton Kutcher's arrest. The fact that Ashton Kutcher has a criminal history may come as a shock to some who have followed his acting career. During his high school years, Christopher Ashton Kutcher and his cousin were accomplices in a school burglary. The pair's goal was to get their hands on the exam answers for the next session. Mark Shapiro, Kutcher's biographer, claims that his parents let him spend the night in detention because they were furious with him for what he did. According to Kutcher's later account of the event, his stepfather had promised to let him spend the night in his house if he were ever placed in jail. "Hey, I'm in jail," I told him when I called him. "Good night," he said before ending the call. The outcome of Kutcher's legal difficulties was a 3-year probationary period and 180 hours of community service. He had a rough go of it already between being cut from school athletics and his girlfriend breaking up with him right before senior prom. This event had a profound effect on him, and he carried its memory for a long time. When he was presented with the Robert D. Drake University's Ray Pillar of Character Award, Kutcher joked about his legal troubles in the past. Thinking back on how his criminal term was influencing his life, he joked about being the first person to receive this honor despite having a deferred judgment for felony burglary. Ashton Kutcher caused a lot of problems while he was a student at the University of Iowa due to his crazy lifestyle. He became notorious for his wild parties and disruptive activities, which led to his final eviction from his flat. Many nights he would lie in a daze, and many mornings he would wake up with no memory of what had happened the night before. A turning point came during one of his inebriated adventures during this turbulent time. The woman advised that Ashton give modeling a go when they were both drinking at the Iowa City Airport bar. Kutcher entered the Iowa Fresh Faces modeling competition knowing full well that he had nothing to lose. Surprisingly, he came out on top, which paved the way for opportunities beyond his academic comfort zone. Ashton flew to New York City to partake in the International Modeling and Talent Association convention. Buoyed by his unforeseen triumph, the tournament was a watershed moment, even though he lost to Josh Duhamel. Several modeling agencies were interested in him because of his striking appearance and impressive height of 6 feet 2 inches. Next modeling agency hired him as a client not long after. When Kutcher decided to devote himself entirely to his modeling profession, he abruptly ended his scholastic studies by dropping out of school. He became the face of Calvin Klein and Zoo York, 2 skateboarding brands, after taking a different road that brought him to prominent advertising campaigns. Ashton Kutcher was fiercely committed to acting, even if he had some success in the modeling industry. He wasted no time taking advantage of the chance to audition for a Los Angeles comedy series. He astonishingly earned 2 roles in 2 different series after auditioning for them. Kutcher was excited to get into his first job, a 1-hour TV drama about cowboy surfers. Nevertheless, he ultimately chose against accepting the role since he didn't feel he was a good match. Wind on Water was an adventure series that ran on a shoestring budget and was canceled after just 6 episodes. On that 70s show, he landed the role of Michael Kelso, his second acting job. It was this part that set Kutcher on the path to success and cemented his position in the entertainment business. This major role was the turning point in Kutcher's career, even though he had a few small supporting parts in romantic comedies like Coming, Soon and Down to You, and the action criminal thriller Reindeer Games in his early years. His role as Jesse in the stoner comedy Dude, Where's My Automobile? Revolves around 2 pals who, following a crazy night of partying, find themselves utterly bereft of the whereabouts of their automobile. Philip Stark, who was a screenwriter and script editor for that 70s show, knew just how to play to Ashton Kutcher's comic skills in the picture. Even though the picture was criticized for being unfunny, its economic success couldn't be denied. With a cheap budget of about $13 million, Kutcher's humorous charm struck a chord with moviegoers in Dude, Where's My Car?, which made over $73 million worldwide. Despite mixed reviews, a serial killer slain his date. The night that Ashton Kutcher was supposed to pick up Ashley Ellerin for a date, the very night that she was murdered, he had a terrifying brush with actual tragedy. In February 2001, serial murderer Michael Gargiulo viciously murdered Ashley, a 22-year-old student of fashion design. After meeting Ashley at a gathering, Kutcher went to her house later that night, but nobody was there. In court, Kutcher recalled the terrible episode and testified about it. He elaborated on his repeated attempts to get Ashley's attention by knocking on her door, but to no avail. He thought she could have gone out or that she was mad at him because he was late. At the time, he didn't think anything was wrong, even though he saw what appeared to be floor stains through the glass. He failed to grasp the seriousness of the situation until the next day when word of her murder spread. As Kutcher recounted, I remember the next day after I heard about what happened. I went to the detectives and said, my fingerprints are on the door. This admission came from a place of terror as he confided in the investigators. The information naturally disturbed him. Gargiulo was convicted and sentenced to death row for the murders of Ashley Ellerin and another woman after the case led to his arrest. Ashton Kutcher's alleged role in the circumstances surrounding Ashley Ellerin's death in 2001 has reignited, even after 20 years. After Danny Masterson's, Kutcher's co-star on that 70s show, girlfriend Chrissy Bixler posted a mysterious Instagram message. The couple came under further scrutiny. Did you fail to remember that I was present? Bixler asked in her narrative. On February 21, 2001, the night of the murder, you contacted Danny while on speakerphone. I caught every detail. The scheme was overheard. To me, you're as bit as ill as your boss. The actor Kutcher was put in his place by Bixler's assertion that she overheard a discussion the night of the murder, which implicated him in a larger plot. These happenings took place in 2001, although nobody paid any attention to them back then. Unsettling concerns about what may have happened that night gained increased attention with Bixler's latest statement. Maximal notoriety. A career-defining role for Ashton Kutcher occurred in 2003's Just Married, a romantic comedy in which he co-starred with Brittany Murphy. While shooting this picture, Kutcher realized he was a natural at romantic comedies and realized it was his niche. The film's success, it grossed over $100 million worldwide, was heavily influenced by his on-screen chemistry with Murphy, which led to a short relationship off-screen. Picture critics were scathing of Kutcher, even though the picture was commercially successful. A reflection of the critical scorn that accompanied his commercial success, he received the Worst Actor nominations at the 24th Golden Raspberry Awards for all three of his films released in 2003. In The Butterfly Effect, a science fiction thriller, Kutcher tried to shake up the romantic comedy genre by playing the role of Evan Treborn. Treborn suffers from blackouts and learns that he can visit his younger self, where he tries to make tiny adjustments that could change his and his family's future. Once again, reviewers were harsh, but the picture was a financial success. No matter how commercially successful Kutcher's films were, reviewers still couldn't get behind him, writing him off as little more than a young idol. The meteoric climb to Hollywood stardom of Ashton Kutcher was puzzling to many, particularly given the widespread disapproval of his acting. Unbeknownst to many, Kutcher had assumed command of his career by producing a number of the films in which he appeared. He and Jason Goldberg co-founded Catalyst, a production firm, in 2000 when he was just 22 years old. Kutcher turned himself into a smart businessman rather than merely an actor when he realized early on that producing provided significantly higher financial benefits than playing alone. But with his next big TV project, his lofty ambitions almost got the best of him. Catalyst and MTV collaborated in the early 2000s to create a hidden camera program that was first called Harassment. Things went downhill in January 2002 while recording the pilot episode. Even though the original plan was to do elaborate pranks on random individuals, guests at the Hard Rock Hotel in Las Vegas were the Ryans, a Washington, D.C. couple named James and Lori Ann. They were terrified to discover what looked like a horrific murder scene, a corpse encircled by blood when they entered their room. Two actors masquerading as security guards barred their way out, and another actor, this time in a paramedic costume, burst into the room. At the height of the couple's terror, Kutcher admitted that it was all an elaborate setup for a new TV program. Not a single Ryan was entertained. The prank backfired, leading to a $10 million lawsuit against Kutcher and MTV, which ultimately derailed the Harassment project. The dream vacation that James and Lori Ann Ryan had planned for themselves in Sin City ended in complete and utter disaster. When they entered their hotel room, they saw what looked like a horrific murder scene, complete with blood and a lifeless body. It frightened them to no end. The Ryans sued MTV for $10 million for the traumatic prank that was meant for the premiere episode of the program Harassment. Serious allegations, including fraud, violation of privacy, and emotional anguish, were alleged in their case. Unbelievably, this wasn't the first time MTV got into trouble for an ill-advised prank. The whole affair was a major gaffe. Not long before, during the filming of another shock value show called Dude, This Sucks, two adolescent females had sued MTV for allegedly spraying them with human feces. The harm had already been done, and the litigation continued in court, even after MTV apologized and promised never to show the tape again. Despite all of these scandals, Ashton Kutcher avoided serious consequences because of the harassment incident. Kutcher's prank program idea was still considered by MTV, which is somewhat surprising. A significant decision was to alter the project's name from Harassment to Punk'd and to switch the spotlight from innocent bystanders to famous people. Upon its March 2003 release, Punk'd became an immediate sensation. Justin Timberlake, a music singer, and Frankie Muniz, an actor, were both pranked by Kutcher in the pilot episode. Especially noteworthy was the prank played on Timberlake. His home and possessions were seized by federal officers who were persuaded to think that he owed $900,000 in unpaid taxes. Due to its flawless execution, the act was eventually placed third on Time magazine's list of 32 great events in reality TV history. Although it wasn't the first prank program, Punk'd became the most watched in its day very fast. An increase of 55% from Season 1 to Season 2 resulted in 4 million viewers for Season 2. It was the hour's most watched program among people between the ages of 12 and 34. During the early 2000s, Punk'd went viral, becoming more than simply a famous TV show. Currently, am I being punked? Become a common way of expressing oneself when faced with unusual or out-of-the-ordinary circumstances. As a result of the show's pervasive influence, The very notion that Ashton Kutcher may leap out with a camera crew became a running joke. Not only was Ashton's performance in that 70s show highly successful, but he was also making waves with his work on Punk'd. When the program was at its peak, he was making $250,000 to $300,000 every episode, or up to $8 million in a season. Unfortunately, things started to go downhill for the program as important actors began to depart. After Topher Grace left after season 7, many viewers believed the program had lost its essence without him as lead Eric Foreman. Additionally, Ashton opted to depart during the 7th season in search of fresh acting and producing chances. Following that 70s show, Ashton Kutcher's filmography was defined by a succession of parts that further entrenched his typecasting as the stupid hot man, a niche that brought in money but received little praise from critics. Although Ashton had 13 film appearances between 2006 and 2014, most of them were romantic comedies that did not succeed in making a significant impression. Bobby, which he directed following that 70s show, was a big picture about the Robert F. Kennedy assassination. Bobby had a hard time connecting with viewers, even though it had a stellar cast. The film bombed at the box office because audiences didn't get into the characters, including Ashton, as authentic representations of Americans in 1968. What Happens in Vegas, Open Season, The Guardian, and Ashton's subsequent involvement in these projects maintained this pattern. Despite the film's respectable box office return, critics mostly panned them, and Ashton's star failed to rise as a result. Even less fruitful were his later forays into independent filmmaking with Spread, Personal Effects, and The Brothers. There was no commercial success for these low-budget productions, and they were heavily panned. Killers, an action comedy starring Ashton and Katherine Heigl that debuted in 2010 and was heavily panned by critics, earned $98 million worldwide on a $75 million budget and was barely profitable. When Ashton's cinematic career was in jeopardy, he and Natalie Portman went back to their romantic comedy roots in No Strings Attached. The critical reception was mixed, but audiences went wild for it, and it made over $149 million globally. At the same time, Ashton's private life was front and center in the press. Although his career has gone through difficulties, his personal life has its own unique aspects. Are you curious about his personal life? Is there any special aspect of him that we do not know? Keep watching and find out. His personal life and separate aspect, his marriage to Demi Moore, an actress, was a continual subject of tabloid headlines. They met in 2003, when he was 25 and she was 40. The fact that Demi had 3 children from her first marriage to Bruce Willis, together with their 15-year age difference, made them an unusual and fascinating Hollywood relationship. But when allegations of Ashton's adultery spread, their relationship started to fall apart. They ended their high-profile marriage with a divorce, after months of rumors and bad press surrounding Ashton and Demi. A new phase in Ashton's life, both professionally and emotionally, began at the same time as his marriage to Demi came to an end. He was back in the limelight in no time, this time with his ex-That 70s Show co-star Mila Kunis as one half of Hollywood's hottest power couple. Ashton Kutcher has maintained strong ties to Demi Moore's 3 kids and has continued to play the role of a father figure in their lives. Even after their divorce, I attempt to keep in contact with the females, Ashton has stated, reflecting on his connection with the girls. No matter what they do, my love, respect, and admiration for them will remain unwavering, and I will always hope that they achieve their goals. Reuniting with his old co-star Mila Kunis was a fortunate turn of events that pleased fans of That 70s Show. Fans' long-held hopes for the two to become a couple were finally fulfilled when their on-screen romance bloomed into a real-life partnership. After a long hiatus from television, Ashton returned in 2011 to star in the role of Charlie Sheen's successor on the smash comedy 2.5 Men. After Sheen's highly publicized breakdown caused him to leave the program, Ashton was cast to replace him. Playing the part of an endearing, naive womanizer allowed him to showcase his talents once more. Despite the show's discontinuation due to falling ratings, Ashton made a killing by playing a prominent role for 4 years in a row. He's an astute financier, though his playing appearances have brought him the most fame in Dude, Where's My Car? and the butterfly effect, the bulk of Ashton Kutcher's estimated $200 million net worth comes from sources other than performing. Famous tech businesses that Kutcher has invested in include Foursquare, Shazam, Uber, Skype, Airbnb, Spotify, Pinterest, and Shazam. As a guest investor on Shark Tank in 2015, he even brought his knowledge to the show. Kutcher's relationship with Mila Kunis was influenced by his digital skills. Kunis said to Jimmy Kimmel that Ashton frequently requested her to try out different dating apps on his behalf. She reflected on the fact that Tinder hadn't achieved its full potential when we began dating. "Babe, I've got this idea," he said. "I would much appreciate it if you could have a look at this app." Kunis got in on the action and began swiping to provide him comments. But that wasn't all. He also had her test out another software. The way she laughed, it was much like her own house. "He insists that I visit all these websites. Is there a homosexual equivalent to Tinder?" Grindr. Tinder. Grindr is where I've been. He wed Mila Kunis after a disastrous blind date. Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher are among the most adored couples in Hollywood right now. This is in contrast to Kutcher's 2012 attempts to introduce Kunis to another suitor. Kutcher asked Kunis over to hang out since the two stars had just ended significant relationships. He had other plans, and she had no idea about them. Kunis revealed to James Corden, reflecting on the development of their friendship, that her husband had been attempting to arrange a blind date between her and one of his best friends that night. "Come over," he said. Additionally, he was hoping to introduce me to a buddy of his. However, this was not the case. She went on to say that they should have seen their relationship coming since they had both been in films about having a friendship with benefits. Kutcher explained everything in an interview with Howard Stern, saying that he never wanted to get married. But after his companion failed to show up, he found himself becoming closer to Kunis throughout the night. It went both ways. To Kutcher, it seemed like things were happening clearly. He also recalled that Kunis had just stopped smoking, so she had requested him to puff some smoke into her mouth so she could feel it secondhand. It became more and nearer as the night progressed, he confessed. An impressive $35 million was raised for migrants from Ukraine by him and Mila Kunis. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis contributed to the collection of more than $35 million in March 2022, in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But Ashton's fight against child sex trafficking via his nonprofit, Thorn, is one of his most significant but underappreciated endeavors. Nonprofit group Thorn creates tools that law enforcement agencies may use for free to better identify sex trafficking victims and apprehend their abusers. Over the past decade, Ashton has devoted himself wholeheartedly to this cause, and his work with Thorn has been essential in making a difference. Spotlight, developed by Thorn, was able to identify 3,977 victims in 2021 and 24,366 victims overall, as reported in the company's impact report for 2021. The technology developed by Thorn is now utilized by over 2,700 law enforcement organizations. Among Thorn's many accomplishments is the removal of abusive material from the internet and the rescue of abused children. Ashton has devoted his life and fortune to this important cause as co-founder and chairwoman of Thorn. The terrible truth of child sex trafficking was brought before Congress in 2017 by Ashton Kutcher. Although his testimony was upsetting, it was essential in getting the word out about this problem. Witnessing things no one should ever have to see was one of the terrifying facts he recounted from his experiences. According to Ashton, he witnessed a father in the United States abusing a child around the same age as his own. An example he gave was of a girl in Cambodia who, because of her upbringing, thought she was playing and was thus oblivious to the sexual abuse she was experiencing. While federal investigators often spend years tracking down and apprehending traffickers, Ashton boasted that his foundation's program can identify them in 3 weeks, or even 3 days in some cases. In addition to requesting money to upgrade this critical infrastructure, he lobbied Congress to back a national effort to end human trafficking. It is uncertain if Ashton's statement resulted in new government initiatives, but his dedication has not wavered. Through his 2022 New York City Marathon race, he was able to raise more than $1 million for Thorn. 100 hard-working individuals are still using technology to keep children safe from sexual assault at Thorn today. Hotly debated Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher have both been in the middle of controversy as of late. Danny Masterson was found guilty of sexual assault. He was one of their co-stars on that 70s show. In 2017, 5 women came forward with charges that Masterson had attacked them in the early 2000s. Masterson has been associated with Scientology from childhood, and 3 of these ladies were notable Scientologists. Masterson adamantly denied any wrongdoing, claiming that the women behind the allegations were only trying to gain publicity after the #MeToo movement. But that wasn't the ruling the court handed out. Startled witnesses testified horribly about the alleged atrocities committed by Masterson during the trial that started in October 2022. Chrissy Bixler, who was his ex-girlfriend, was one of the casualties. 2 women accused Masterson of sexually abusing them in 2003. He was found guilty in May 2023. Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher surprised everyone when they asked the court to be lenient with Masterson's sentence in separate letters. Regardless of the guilty conviction, Ashton lauded Masterson as an example of integrity and purpose in his letter. "I hope my testimony about his character is considered during sentencing," and he writes at the end of the letter. "I don't think he's a danger to society in the long run, and it would be unfair for his daughter to grow up without him." The court handed down Danny Masterson's 30-year prison term regardless of Ashton and Mila's pleadings. The public views Ashton differently now that he has backed Masterson. Ashton has been a strong voice against human trafficking for the last 10 years. She has seen the most horrific acts committed by traffickers and has worked relentlessly to rescue victims and assist them in rebuilding their lives. By standing by his co-star Danny Masterson, who was found guilty of the identical crimes that Ashton Kutcher has been fighting against, Ashton Kutcher appeared to be betraying all that he stood for. In direct opposition to Ashton's lobbying activity, he defended Masterson's reputation and contended that his incarceration would constitute an injustice. His credibility took a major hit after making this comment. Ashton and Mila both expressed regret once the letters were made public. They acknowledged the hurt that the character letters prepared for Danny Masterson had caused. They affirmed their historical support for victims through their past work and committed to continuing this support in the future. They explained that a few months prior, Danny's family had requested that they write character letters to reflect their long-term acquaintance with him. For the judge to consider this perspective in sentencing, they clarified that the letters were not meant to question the legitimacy of the judicial system or the validity of the jury's verdict. They emphasized that the letters were intended solely for the judge's review and were not meant to undermine the victim's testimony or cause any re-traumatization. They expressed deep regret if their actions had inadvertently caused such harm and extended their sympathy to all victims of sexual assault and abuse. Despite this apology, it failed to clarify why the letters were written and left many questioning why they had celebrated Ashton Kutcher over the years. Thank you for watching the video. Please click on the next video that appears on your screen, as well as click the like and subscribe button if you find this video interesting. See you in the next videos.